Uh,
All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. If you've been following along this month, you know that we have been really focusing on the issue of climate change. So talking to scientists and explorers from around the world who have seen things firsthand, who are studying the issues, and many who are looking for solutions to try and mitigate what we are doing to our planet. So I want to give a big shout out to Environment and Climate Change Canada, who has been supporting us throughout these events this month. So thank you for helping us make these events possible. And then I want to give obviously a huge shout out to our guest for today. So Daniel Fox is an explorer, storyteller, and Fujifilm X-photographer. He's an artist that uses the wilderness as his studio. It's where he goes to create, photograph, and to write. So through media like photo, video, and stories, he's trying to inspire the public to look at nature and realize its beauty, but also how it can be used to transform people personally. He also founded an organization called WILD.ECO, so a non-for-profit youth program offering character development and mentorship and raising funds to help disadvantaged students visit the wilderness and be immersed in these different camps. Some of his work has appeared in magazines like Outdoor Magazine, Canoe Kayak Magazine, Adventure Kayak Magazine, Sea Kayaker Magazine, Alaska Magazine, and many more. So Daniel, it's so great to be stealing some of your time today, and we're excited to learn a little bit about you and what you do, and of course the classroom's going to have some questions for you as well.
Excited to be here. This is fun.
All right, and Daniel, just to confirm, you are out on the West Coast, aren't you?
I am indeed. I'm based in Vancouver, although I lived in the US and South America and Europe over the course of 25 years or something like that. I've been back in Canada for three and a half years now.
All right, excellent. And you know, you've had a pretty exciting career. It's given you the opportunity to travel, to see the world in a way a lot of people haven't been able to before.
Yes, well, my background is when I was in Quebec at the age of 18. I went south to New York and tried to make it in the corporate world. And fast forward 10 years, I had to reassess my last 10 years and how I want to proceed forward. And I was not really happy where I was, so I went back to my roots and started the Wild Image project, which was an artistic project on kind of trying to tell the story of our relationship with the natural environment. So I started to do solo wilderness expeditions and writing stories and taking pictures of the wildlife and the nature landscapes.
All right, and I think there's two really good points you brought up there with what you just said. Is one, you know, people really should have a think about what's they're passionate about, what's important to them, and then the second one is there's nothing wrong with changing your mind, nothing wrong with going in a different direction, because at the end of the day, you want to be happy and enjoy what you're doing.
I think I would phrase it a little bit. I think that happiness is a different is a state of mind, but I think the purpose, what we should be looking for is finding a road, a direction that gives us a sense of purpose. Because even if you find that path, it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy for the rest of your life. It just means that even when you hit the bottom, or even when certain days are not as fun as usual, you still feel committed. You still feel that you want to be there. Often, you know, I try to compare it to relationships. Finding the person that you want to be and share the rest of your life with doesn't mean that it's going to be a walk in the park and rosy every single day. It just means that even when two people don't agree or are having a rough patch, you still want to be there with that person. So it's finding something that you're passionate, finding something that gives you a sense of purpose, something that gives you the motivation that even when you don't want to be there, not that you don't want to be there, but even when it's hard, you still want to be there.
All right, awesome. Well, Daniel, I think you might have a little bit to share with us if you want to do the share screen, and then we'll go from there.
Yes. So we could be talking about climate change. So share screen, where do I go for this? Oh, screen share.
Yeah, and then choose the option for your whole desktop. That's the one that works the best.
I'll choose application, yes.
All right,
Okay.
that's promising.
So I see you. All right. So if let's bring up. So one of the things that so this is my website, but I wanted to start with I recently went and spent 2 weeks on a glacier, and the photo that you see right now is a light painting image that I did. It's about 20-minute exposure where the camera is on a tripod and I go with a flashlight and I do light painting, so you can see the trace of the light. And the interesting thing when you do a photograph like this and you try to do letters is you have to write backward, the same reason that on ambulance the letters on the front of the car are written backwards. So when you work with the camera, it's the same principle. But I was on this ice cave, which is located just outside of Whistler, and a helicopter actually flew me over there and dropped me where I spent 2 weeks sleeping not too far from there, actually. And a funny note, I actually got married to my wife, and just not too far from there. The story behind that is that when I wanted to start my life with my wife, I wanted to have a place that was A, by the water, and B, something that would be ours and ours only, an ephemeral place. And while visiting some friends in Whistler, I got to know this company who took people to an ice cave. So we went over there and did the ceremony. So 2 years later, I decided to go back and spend some time over there and write about change. And so here we can see, hopefully it's going to work, but we can see how during the course of 1 week, this is a time lapse that shows how the glacier was moving. So I'm just going to press it again. We can see this part here that falls. So one of the things that is interesting is that during my stay there, I discovered that during the day, the glacier absorbs a lot of heat. And it's at night that it starts to crack, because at night it starts to get cold again, and all the water that kind of seep through the cracks now starts to expand again because it freezes. And usually it would be from 10 p.m. until midnight, but I would hear these huge boom. And when this one here fell, when this one fell, it sounded literally as if like all the mountains were collapsing. It was extremely powerful. But one of the, so I write, this is a little hummingbird actually that came to visit me. And I'm going to use this to lead to a point that I've shared with you, Joe, is when you're there by the glacier, without any context, without the world telling you what to think, if it's right or wrong, the thing that you realize is that the second that the ice retreats, life starts to bloom. The flower starts to appear, birds starts to show up, insects start to crawl around, and you really realize that this place starts to become alive. And there was even a side of me that looked at the rocks that were coming out for the first time in 10,000 years. And there was a part that was just kind of happy for them, because now they were about to take part of the journey of life. They're going to start to accumulate dirt, and then on that bed of dirt, they're going to start to have plants. And you're at that location by the glacier, and you start to pan around, and you see how life is becoming more and more intense as you get away from the glacier. So the for me, the understanding of change and nature and this relationship between ice that retreats and or advances is that it's a really dynamic environment, and our place in it has to be one out of understanding, reciprocity, humility, understanding that we have to respect the natural world because we depend on it, not necessarily because it is our responsibility to manage it and to save it, but to understand that our own survival depends on it. Because one of the things that was interesting, so this is me actually looking over the glacier where I was walking around pretty much every day. There was, let me just show you a little bit more photos on this trip. So this is a boulder that I took inside the ice cave at nighttime. It's a 20-minute exposure photograph, and where I lit up the ice. So this is the ice cave again. This is me looking over the glacier as I shared with you. So this would be most of my days, where this is my little kitchen area, and I would write in my journal and I would observe. And in the funny ways, I would often I would find myself talking to the glacier, because my goal when I go on these expeditions is really to kind of capture the spirit of the location. And for me to do that is really to use nature as a companion, as a teacher. So I talk to it and I try to listen what it has to say. This is my morning ritual. I drink yerba mate, which is a South American loose leaf tea. It's a ritual that compared to coffee, where usually you just take a couple sips, this is a half an hour, 45-minute ritual, and allows me to start the day with a peace of mind that for me has become extremely precious. This is the river that starts from the glacier, and basically the source of life for many other environments that you find downstream. If it was not for the glacier melting, a lot of forest or a lot of animals downstream would have to move. So there's this idea of right or wrong is really difficult in nature, because I've never felt that there's that distinction. You find life all over the spectrum, and it's really just a matter of where you stand in that spectrum. This was just a picture to illustrate, first of all, the scale, but also the it's a path that I would take often to go to a different place on the glacier, and you can see me walking at the top, and at the bottom right here, this was the main cave where the glacier is melting. Again, me just on the walking on the glacier. This is me doing meditation in the in an ice cave. I was doing a little bit of polar bear and meditation. So this is actually glacial water, and I was practicing a meditation that you have to hyperventilate for about 2-3 minutes, between 2 and 5 minutes, and then you get into the glacial water and you start to you need to obviously calm yourself. I think I did like 30 or 40 seconds in it. Again, going into the ice cave. So this one is really interesting, because what I wanted to illustrate with this is what you see in the back, this black cone, is actually an ancient volcano that erupted under miles of ice. And because it had nowhere to explode, to blow, it basically cooked itself into a black cone. So you have to imagine that many thousands of years ago, there was so much ice above this mountain that a volcano was not able to explode. So all this valley that I'm walking in, that now I enjoy and full of life, was covered by ice way before the arrival of the human species. So this idea of change has always been present. Now, it doesn't mean that the urgency of us redefining our relationship with the natural world is not a necessity. It is a necessity. We have to change our relationship with the natural world, but we have to understand also that life is so much bigger than us. So doing it from a different perspective, from a perspective of humility and understanding, rather than from a place of righteousness. So those are just little critters that I photographed there. These are called tiger beetles. They have these big, massive jaws, and they go extremely, extremely fast. So I had basically I was laying down on the ground for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I would look at these little critters and kind of moving around. Extremely interesting. They have really striking colors and iridescent colors also. This one actually had caught a flying ant that was just passing by. This is my mate. Sunset. This is a little hummingbird actually that I was there. That was in the first couple of days that I arrived, and I'm drinking my morning and doing my morning ritual, and then suddenly I hear this intense buzzing, and it happened that the hummingbird actually just came right buzzing by my ear. They had a helicopter that came to drop me and pick me up. As it flew away, there's the flowers that are the second that the ice retreats, you start to see flower blooming everywhere. Mushrooms, life, these little creeks that just turn into these magical Japanese garden. It is fascinating. Now this is, hopefully it's going to come out right. But so in the glacier, you actually find these ice worms. And not a lot of things are known about ice worms other than they are in pretty much all the glaciers. And they migrate within the glacier. They feed on algae, and they burrow little path in the ice. They eat the algae, and at night they go into deeper into the glacier. But it's full of life. One of the things that you realize is that everywhere you look, you find life. And then they fall into water puddle, and they look like Medusa heads, or I'm not too sure that the children will, the students will know the reference, but it's simply fascinating. There's actually a city in Alaska, in Cordova. They have an annual ice worm festival. The things that you learn. Now this is another thing that I discovered. At one point I was going through the ice cave, and I saw this aggregation of insects who were there, and it took me some time to, I can't remember exactly the name of these little insects, but there was just this massive gathering of insects in one particular place in the ice cave. So again, a really, really dynamic environment where you see critters that benefit from the ice. You see other creatures who benefit from the ice retreating. Again, we have the ice worm. And some of them move really fast, and some of them will stay in one place. But one of the things that have been discovered is that they rise up to the top of the glacier when it gets warmer, and when it gets colder, they actually will go deeper into the glacier, because as you get deeper, interestingly enough, it doesn't get as cold. It's the wind and really at the surface of the glacier that is colder. As you get deeper, the ice actually starts to act as insulation. I find that fascinating. So again, this is the time lapse that I did on the bridge, and you can see it's moving and collapsing. And you can see the flow. I'm going to start it again, but you can see the flow of the river increasing. Like in the morning, it's kind of lower, and as the day progresses, then it gets bigger. Now, these are just pictures of artifacts that I took over there. This is a piece of wood, probably 10,000 plus years old. These rocks are all found at the bottom of the ice cave, and they really connect you to a time. Like these rocks really came out of the ice, and my hands were the first touch that they received in thousands and thousands of years. And you kind of like have to close your eyes and put yourself at that time. It really connects you to a scale of time that is hard for us to understand. I think those are just photos of ice, and this one is called Scars, but you can see these huge crevasses. So Joe, I'm gonna hold on 2 seconds. I'm gonna see first if I'm gonna put the camera back on, and I'm gonna see if you have any questions.
All right, you're back. Well, Daniel, thanks for sharing that journey with us. I think
there we go.
Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. Well, thanks for sharing that journey with us. I think that's so important. Is a lot of people would visit somewhere like that glacier. They might spend a couple hours, take a few pictures, and think that they experienced that place. But when you really go somewhere, take your time, slowly explore it, you find this incredible world, all this change happening, the resiliency of nature, surviving in these areas of extremes where you wouldn't think that they would, or seeing that actual change where the glacier retreats and seeing that new life kind of form in its path. It's a really amazing way to look at our planet, instead of just quick pictures and quick visits, to slow down and see some of it.
Yes, it's you can make the parallel with pretty much everything. Like even you find yourself in a room. Now, if there are other people in there with the room, the dynamic is going to be between you and the people. You're going to be talking, and the room is literally just kind of a space. But it's just, if you're just by yourself in that room for 30 minutes, for an hour, 2 hours, now you start looking at the room. You start to looking at the details. You start to interact with the room. So when you can spend your entire life going to nature, to the wilderness, but never truly connecting with it, because every time that you go, the relationship is more within the people that you go with. You never stop to look at the trees and really try to understand the dynamics of what is happening there. So for me, one of the things that is really important is to experience that solitude, not to be alone, not to be lonely in nature or in the wilderness, but at least a couple times, or at least once in your life, to have that experience of having a deeper connection with the natural world, starting to look at it as a source of teaching, as a teacher, something that is bigger than you, that can give you these insights that will help you in your journey of life.
Yeah. And it's definitely a perspective. You spend time out there. It goes back to a quote, you only protect what you love, you only love what you understand. And I think if more people took the time to really understand and really see nature as it is, I think that would lead to a better stewardship of the planet.
Yeah, it's one of the things that is hard right now. And if you look at the indigenous communities or culture before the modern era, is that their connection to the consequences of their action was more immediate. If they overfished one season, then they found themselves the next season kind of like in a bad position. If they did something that was not respecting the balance of the natural world, then the natural world, the nature was telling them pretty rapidly that they had done a mistake. What is hard for us right now in our culture is that we have disconnected ourselves from the consequences of our actions. We can overfish for quite some time and then go overfishing in some other places, because now the capacity to just go global has given us the impression that we're living this little bubble, but we don't feel the consequences of our actions. Like we can talk about garbage in the ocean, but for most of us, for 99% of us, it's conceptual. It's something that we have to think about. It's not something that we have to live with, because my relationship with garbage is that at the end of the day, I take my bag and I put it into the street. That is a reality for me. Everything above that is conceptual. So nature has really become more conceptual than reality, because we live more in cities and we've made this separation between humans and nature.
All right. Well, let's meet some of our classrooms and see if they have some questions for us. So yeah, we're going to go to Guelph, Ontario first. We have some grade 4s hanging out with Mrs. Camplin. Let's get their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 4s?
Good.
All right.
Hello.
I don't remember who is the inspired question. Julia, come here, Julia.
Can I ask?
We might have time to ask more, but we're going to ask Julia's first.
All right, Julia.
All right.
Hi.
Nice around, Julia. Any question? James.
What inspired you to take pictures of nature?
It started when I was really young. Nature for me has always been a place that made more sense than often the human world. It's something that is bigger. It's something that for me has a lot of. It's like a teacher. It's like a mentor, and I wanted to honor and capture this relationship with the natural world, and by taking photograph of it. So for me, it's something that connects me to life.
All right, we're going to come back your way, but first we're going to go to our other group. We have some grade 5 classes hanging out with us in Bolton, Ontario. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, grade 5? All right, who's on deck?
Okay. How many different places have you been?
I have been in Argentina. I've been in Alaska, British Columbia, obviously Canada, the US. I've stayed mostly in North America because I travel solo, so traveling by car is easier. And so everywhere from Baja California, Argentina, and Alaska. Yeah.
All right. And that in itself, I think, is important too, because again, that's a slower journey. You see more, you take in more than if you just hop on an enclosed tube in the sky and you appear somewhere. So I think that's probably an important part of some of the journeys too, is getting there.
Yes, absolutely. I have the story that talks about how the summit of the mountain is only just a motivation for you to get there. Once you get to the summit, you actually realize that you want to go somewhere else. So it's really just like everything in between the summit and your departing point and where you want to go after. So these destinations are just kind of a motivation for you to go. But the lessons are everywhere in between.
All right, let's go back to our class in Guelph and turn their microphone on.
Georgia. This is Georgia.
What age did you start photography at?
I actually started late. Funny enough, when I was younger, I was more into business. My brother was more the artist one, and I was more the entrepreneur of the family. And then I went to business school, and then in my late 20s, I started to embrace my artistic side, and I self-taught myself in photography.
All right, Bolton, Ontario, I'm going to turn your microphone on again.
Jax, pop your head up, Jax.
What was your favorite
Favorite thing you've taken a picture of?
What was your favorite thing you took in a picture of?
They all different. Every animal, I love bigger animals, obviously, because they have more of a sense of more of a connection. But they all have, for me, what is really important when I photograph is I want to see the eyes. The eyes say a lot. So that's why often I don't photograph a lot of insects, but I photograph bears, sea lions. I photographed buffaloes, jaguars, wolves, foxes, and eagles. And my goal is always to kind of capture their spirit, capture their essence. I want to. One of the things that for me is important is I don't look at animals as lesser than me. I see them as a creature that has successfully mastered its niche of survival. So there's something to learn. There's something that they're great at, and that's what I want to capture. Because like if you think about it, like an eagle is able to see from so far away. Their eyes are just so much better than mine. And they fly on top of that. So I'm nowhere better than them. I'm really equal, and I want to honor that relationship. Yes. Do we have another question? Yes. I can't. Can people hear me or? Yes. Joe, are you still there?
I'm not sure if Joe can
okay.
hear you, but we can hear you. So
All right, excellent. Now I can. Yes, I hear. Okay. Another question?
Charlie?
What are the top five places you've been to?
So Baja California, which is in Mexico, in the Sea of Cortez. Alaska. I've been to Kodiak Island. Kodiak Island is this island that's just off Alaska, and you have to take a boat to get there, or a plane. British Columbia, Argentina. Argentina is a huge country. It has so many amazing places. So that's 3. Haida Gwaii, which those are islands that are not too far from British Columbia. They're called the Galapagos Island of North America. Yes, it's a beautiful place. Canada has so many places to go to, and that's one of the things that for me I've come to realize is that I don't need to go halfway across the world. There's so much to see right in our backyard.
All right, I lost you guys for a second. I think technology is just not cooperating with us today. I got kicked right out, but it let me back in. So it sounds like Mrs. Campbell's class took the lead and got another question in there. That's awesome.
Yes.
Let's visit Bolton, Ontario one more time, see if they have a question.
Food do you take with you?
What kind of foods do you take when you're in the wilderness alone?
Really boring food. It's when you're just by yourself and you go out for 2-3 weeks at a time, your feeding habits become extremely simple. So a lot of things that need to be that don't rot, with the elements. They don't need really like a fridge, or so a lot of rice, a lot of dry meat. If I can fish, then I'll fish. If I can hunt, I'll hunt too. But it's usually things that are, and I'll like oatmeal, so your breakfast become extremely simple. It's just like a oatmeal mix, and then you snack your way through the day. And then at night, it's some kind of dry meat with some rice, and you're just gonna boil. One thing that is good is if you're able to pre-cook for your trip, and then you dehydrate the food so that when you're back out there, you don't have to cook it again. You just have to rehydrate your food. Good question. Oh, Joe, I think we lost your voice.
There we go. I was
there we go. Yeah.
muted. I have a question. I was just checked our YouTube community, and there's a grade 6 class in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and they're wondering about is there a story or a place that you're being drawn to next, where you want to go and spend another time on a solo expedition?
I do want to go to and spend more time at Hawaii, on the west coast of British Columbia. It's a place that has a lot of power. The First Nation have always been extremely protective of the area. There's so many different bays, and then there you have the wolves. So I want to go and spend more time there. I would love to go further north into the Arctic, and see what I can do over there. But Hawaii is definitely on my list right now.
All right, awesome. Thanks for sending that question in to our grade 6s. So boys and girls on camera, give me a wave if we should visit your class one more time if you have another question for us. All right, we'll stop in each class one more time then. So we'll start off in Guelph, Ontario.
Okay.
You done with it?
Yeah. Okay.
So what was the question?
Sorry.
Are you related to
Okay.
Why did you start taking pictures in the wilderness or like nature?
Because that's what I wanted to do when I was young. When I was young, I watched Cousteau on television. I watched these animal shows, and it's really where my passion was and where I felt like I could bring something. And the way that I do it in a way that is different than most of the people. Like I don't impose myself into the natural world when I photograph them. I really kind of like, I sit and I try to become more of a participant and an observer rather than someone who just goes and take.
All right, and one more swing through our grade 5 in Bolton.
How much time do you normally spend in each place that you go?
So I usually go with a one-way ticket because my goal is always to connect with the local people first because they're my access to the secret places. And once I have a better idea of the exact places that I want to go, then I spend about 2 to 3 weeks by myself out there. And I spent some time on the big island of Hawaii on photographing lava. That I spent about 6 weeks, but that was a little bit longer. But the idea is to go and spend enough time so that I can receive whatever message or insight that the location has to share. And once I have it, then I feel like I need to come back and craft the story and share it. So usually it's 2 to 3 weeks.
All right. Well, before we do sign off for today, I want to give a quick shout out. We had a classroom joining us in Trenton, Ontario, some grade 7-8 students. And Daniel, they caught most of your presentation, but the teacher did just send me an email. They're in rural Ontario and they lost their internet connection. So what I might do is gather some questions from her and send them your way, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to. Anybody who has more questions after, just send them my way. I will answer them with pleasure.
All right. Well, technology did play a factor in today's event, but I think we pulled it off. So Daniel, thank you so much for hanging out with us, sharing your perspectives. I think that, again, change is not something we should be afraid of. In a lot of cases, change is natural and normal. And I mean, there's beauty in change, right? Seeing that new life.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we come to this world and there's a little baby, and then we grow, and then we learn, we evolve. One of the things that I often say is that we've made mistakes in the past, and the only reason why we know they're mistakes is because of we're able to look back. It's the insights that give us this wisdom. But I think it's pointless to look back and fill their past with guilt and anxiety. The reason why we're 7 billion or maybe about 8 billion on the planet is not because we're a bad species, it's because we're expert at adapting. We're expert at learning from our mistakes. We really rise when the trouble hits the fan or the roof. It's what we do. This is what we do best. Now, it doesn't mean that things are easy. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be tough. It will be tough. But this is what we're good at, by figuring out how to get out of it. So for me, I have great confidence into the future, and I want people to be empowered by our capacity to be human and to do greatness, as opposed to constantly looking at ourselves as bad people.
All right. Well, again, Daniel, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Boys and girls, thank you for hanging out on the day before the break and sharing your great questions. The last thing we'll do is we'll turn all the microphones on, and if you guys want to do a big goodbye and thank you, we'll sign off after that. So I'm going to turn the microphones on. You guys can get loud for a minute.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you for hanging out. You guys enjoy your break. Daniel, have a good weekend, and hopefully we can host you again in the future. So thanks so much, everyone.
Would be wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.